Four disturbing, true deep woods wilderness horror stories tell late night story. Everyone thinks the deep woods are just trees, flowing streams, and the peaceful sounds of nature. But when night falls, when the only thing surrounding you is darkness and the eerie whispers of the wind through the trees, are you really alone out there? There are stories people are too afraid to tell, stories of those who stepped into the woods and never returned. Strange footprints appearing out of nowhere, whispers in the dead of night, unseen eyes watching from the shadows. Do you have the courage to keep listening? These are four true horror stories of terrifying encounters deep in the wilderness, where there's no one to call for help, where fear is the only thing keeping you company. Are you ready? If you're brave enough, keep watching. But whatever you do, don't listen alone at night. DTC, the place of the brave. Story 1, Whispers from the Hidden Cellar. When my wife and I decided to leave the city and move into an old house near the forest, I thought it would be a fresh start, a peaceful life we had always longed for. The house had a rustic charm, with weathered wooden walls, a small backyard, and an expansive forest stretching to the horizon. The previous owner mentioned that the house had stood for hundreds of years, its history long forgotten by most. I didn't care. All I wanted was to enjoy the fresh air and escape the city's chaos. But from the very first month, I began to feel that something was off. The first few nights, I was often jolted awake by strange noises, soft shuffling sounds, as if someone was dragging their feet across the old wooden floors, faint whispers that seemed to emerge from within the walls, and occasionally a weak knocking sound from beneath the floorboards. At first, I reassured myself that these were just the usual sounds of an old house, wind slipping through cracks, branches tapping against the windows. But soon, the noises became clearer. One night, I woke up and was certain I heard someone whispering right outside our bedroom. It wasn't just a random sound, it was deliberate, broken, like two voices murmuring back and forth. I held my breath, straining to listen, trying to pinpoint the source. A cold shiver ran down my spine when I realized the voices weren't coming from the hallway, but from right behind our bedroom door. My heart pounded so loudly that I feared whoever or whatever was out there could hear it. I reached for my flashlight, slowly turned the door handle, and pushed it open with a creak. I shone the light down the hallway, scanning every shadowed corner, but there was nothing. Only pitch black darkness and an oppressive silence that felt unnatural. The following morning, as I stepped into the backyard, I noticed something unusual. A wooden plank on the ground had been shifted, revealing a dark opening beneath. I didn't recall seeing it before. Maybe it had always been there, hidden under a layer of dried leaves. A mix of curiosity and unease crept over me as I cautiously slid the plank aside. A gust of icy air rushed up, chilling me to the bone. Beneath the opening was a rickety wooden staircase descending into darkness. A musty, damp odor wafted from below. Swallowing hard, I switched on my phone's flashlight and carefully made my way down. The cellar was smaller than I expected. The stone walls were ancient, the ceiling low, and the air so thick it felt suffocating. My flashlight beam swept across the room, revealing a series of old photographs hanging on the walls. As I stepped closer, my breath caught in my throat. Every single picture was of our house, but there was something deeply unsettling about them. Each one captured a shadowy figure lurking somewhere in the frame. He was always there, behind a window, peeking from behind the trees, or standing in the background, just out of focus. I staggered backward, my heart hammering in my chest, cold sweat dripping down my forehead. My breathing turned shallow, my throat dry, as if something invisible was tightening around it, and my legs felt as if they could give out at any moment. A spine-chilling sensation of being watched gripped me as if something unseen was lurking in the darkness, waiting. Just as I turned to leave, I froze. My wife was standing at the top of the stairs, her face pale as if she had just seen something unimaginable. Her hands trembled as she held out her phone, her eyes wide with fear. Before I could say a word, she showed me the screen. It was a message from an unknown number with only one chilling sentence. "Don't go down there, he's still there." A wave of dread washed over me. Still there? Who was sending this message? I whipped around, sweeping my flashlight frantically across the cellar. Nothing, just those haunting photographs. But I knew better than to trust my eyes. Something was here, watching, waiting. Without hesitation, I grabbed my wife's hand and bolted out of the cellar, slamming the wooden cover shut and placing a heavy rock on top. We barely spoke the rest of the night, sitting silently in the brightly lit living room, too afraid to sleep. I tried to come up with a logical explanation, but there was none. We had never told anyone about the cellar. How could someone know I was about to go down there at that exact moment? And if he was still there, who was he? From that night on, I constantly felt like I was being watched. The footsteps had stopped, but something far worse had replaced them, an unnatural silence, so deep and absolute that it felt as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting. What do you think I should do? Could this house have been the site of some horrific events long ago? Could the man in the photos still be lurking in the shadows, waiting for something or someone? Or worse, what if he isn't even human? What if this cellar wasn't just an old storage space, but a gateway to something far beyond my understanding? Should I open it again to uncover the truth, or should I leave this place before it's too late? Do you dare to listen to the dark? If tonight's tale gave you chills, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what creeps you out and what other stories you'd love us to explore. Don't miss out on the next terrifying story. Subscribe to DTC, the Place of the Brave, and join the family that thrives on the unknown. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to hear every spine-chilling tale. Share this video with someone brave enough to face the darkness, and let's dive deeper into the creeps that haunt our world. Comment below and become part of the terror. The darkness is calling, and we want you with us. Story 2. The Abandoned Cabin in the Deep Woods. I never thought that my journey to capture the beauty of nature would turn into the most horrifying nightmare of my life. I originally intended to seek breathtaking moments of the wilderness, but instead I stumbled upon something else, something I was never meant to see. My name is Nam, and I am a photographer passionate about exploring nature. The untouched landscapes, the mysterious creatures, and the tranquil atmosphere of deep forests have always fascinated me. So when I heard about a remote forest near the Northwest Mountains, a place rarely visited by people, I decided to spend a week there, hoping to capture some of the most stunning shots of my career. The first day went by without any incidents. I set up my tent near a small stream, enjoyed a simple meal under the fading golden sky, and curled up in my sleeping bag, letting the sounds of nocturnal insects lull me to sleep. But at sunrise the next morning, I realized something was terribly wrong. Strange footprints surrounded my tent. They weren't mine, and they weren't human either. The deep imprints on the damp soil suggested something with unnaturally long feet and sharp toes had been lurking around my campsite. My spine tingled as an unsettling feeling crept over me, but I convinced myself that it was just some wild animal passing through. Deep inside, however, I knew I was lying to myself. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to follow the tracks. They led me deeper into the forest, far beyond where I had originally planned to go. After nearly an hour, I stopped abruptly. In front of me stood an old wooden cabin, its walls covered in moss, its roof partially collapsed under the weight of time. The door, hanging slightly ajar, seemed to be inviting, or perhaps warning me to enter. A heavy sense of unease settled in my stomach, but my instincts told me I had to see what was inside. Stepping into the cabin, I was met with a musty, stale air that made my skin crawl. The place was a mess. An old, torn mattress lay on the floor, accompanied by tattered clothes and a weathered journal. I picked it up, flipping through the yellowed pages. The handwriting was erratic, frantic, almost illegible. Over and over again, the same chilling phrase appeared. "He is watching me." Every night, he stands among the trees. I turned to the last page. The final words were scrawled hastily, the ink smeared as if the writer had been interrupted. "I am no longer alone. He knows I am watching him." The air in the cabin suddenly felt thick, suffocating. A cold shiver ran down my spine. The overwhelming sensation of being watched gripped me so tightly that I almost choked on my own breath. I spun around and ran, not stopping until I reached my campsite. But what I saw made my blood run cold. Everything was in disarray. My sleeping bag was shredded, my backpack and camera gone. My belongings were scattered as if someone or something had searched through them. And then I heard it. A quiet chuckle. Low, drawn out, inhuman. It wasn't just laughter, it was a twisted, distorted sound, as if coming from a mouth that didn't belong to a person. Goosebumps prickled along my arms. My heart pounded violently against my ribs. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I could feel it now. Whatever it was behind me. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to run, but my legs refused to move. The darkness from the trees seemed to stretch, engulfing the space around me. A frigid breeze swept past my neck, carrying with it a putrid, rancid breath. And then a whisper, mere inches from my ear, "You have seen me now." I bolted. I didn't care where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. Branches whipped across my face. My feet stumbled over rocks and roots, but I didn't dare stop. I ran and ran until at last I saw the faint glow of streetlights in the distance. I had no idea how I managed to escape, but even as I left that cursed forest, I could still feel unseen eyes boring into me. That night, in the small motel where I sought refuge, just as I was about to drift into a restless sleep, I heard it again, just outside my window. The same eerie, whispering laughter. Have you ever felt like someone was watching you when you were alone? If so, ask yourself this: are you absolutely sure that you were really alone? Do you dare to listen to the dark? If tonight's tale gave you chills, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what creeps you out and what other stories you'd love us to explore. Don't miss out on the next terrifying story. Subscribe to DTC The Place of the Brave and join the family that thrives on the unknown. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to hear every spine-chilling tale. Share this video with someone brave enough to face the darkness, and let's dive deeper into the creeps that haunt our world. Comment below and become part of the terror. The darkness is calling, and we want you with us. Story 3: The Watcher in the Woods. I have spent nearly my entire life hunting. The vast forest has always been my sanctuary, a second home where I feel most at peace. The familiar sounds of nature, the rustling leaves, the distant calls of birds, always bring me comfort. But on that night, I learned a terrifying truth. The forest is not always a place for humans. That day, I was tracking a large stag. The sun was setting, casting an amber glow through the trees, painting the forest in hues of red and gold. As I crouched down to examine the damp earth, my heart skipped a beat. Among the hoof prints of the deer were human footprints, barefoot. I froze. This forest was miles away from the nearest settlement. No sane person would wander this deep into the woods without shoes. But what unsettled me most was the pattern of the footprints. Some steps were deeply imprinted as if the person had been running, others abruptly changed direction. Some prints looked like the person had been walking backward, and then there were those that seemed to fade. as if the person had slowly sunk into the ground. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. Maybe someone had gotten lost, or maybe it was just a recluse living deep in the wilderness. But every instinct in my body screamed that something was wrong. I turned back, but as I lifted my gaze, my blood ran cold. The footprints were everywhere now, intertwined, overlapping, forming a chaotic maze around me. They formed a massive, eerie circle, enclosing me. A sharp gust of cold wind swept over my neck, sending a shiver down my spine. The feeling of being watched became unbearable. The air was thick, and the familiar sounds of the forest had vanished. I slowly lifted my head and someone was standing between the trees. The figure was motionless. It didn't flinch, didn't move. I narrowed my eyes, trying to make out a face, but the dim light made it impossible. All I knew was that whoever it was, they were staring straight at me. My hands gripped my rifle tightly as I called out, "Who's there? Come out." No answer. I switched on my flashlight. A beam of white light cut through the shadows and landed on the figure, and in that instant my heart nearly stopped. It wasn't human. It had a humanoid form, but its eyes were hollow, black voids. Its skin was deathly pale, wrinkled as if it had never seen sunlight. And as the light touched its face, it smiled, a smile that stretched unnaturally wide from ear to ear. No, it wasn't just a smile. Its teeth were jagged, razor sharp, and something thick and dark dripped from its mouth. A nauseating stench filled the air, making my stomach churn. For a moment, my body refused to obey me. I knew I had to run, but my legs were frozen in place. Then, without warning, the creature lunged toward me, not running, but gliding across the ground with impossible speed. Its movement was unnatural, as if it wasn't using its feet at all. A sickening, bone-grinding sound filled the air, like brittle joints scraping together. I panicked and pulled the trigger. Nothing. I stared in horror. I had loaded my rifle before heading into the forest. I was certain of it. I frantically disengaged the safety, tried chambering another round, but the gun refused to work. Somehow I knew this thing wouldn't let me use it. I turned and ran. My heart pounded so violently it felt like it would burst. I didn't dare look back. I didn't need to. I could hear it. A whispering, rasping breath just behind me. A presence that loomed over my shoulder. Too close, too fast. Then I tripped. I tumbled down a steep embankment, crashing into a shallow creek. My head struck a rock. Pain exploded in my skull, and for a moment my vision blurred. Just before I blacked out, I caught one last glimpse of it, standing above me, staring down. Its eyes still locked onto mine, but this time it wasn't smiling. It was waiting. I woke to daylight. My head throbbed, but I was alive. The footprints were gone. The thing, whatever it was, had vanished. Birds chirped, the wind rustled through the trees, as if the nightmare had never happened. I never told anyone. Who would believe me? But I know what I saw was real. And the worst part? Ever since that night, I can feel it. Something stands outside my window at night, shrouded in darkness, watching me sleep. And this morning, when I stepped outside my door, there was something waiting for me on my porch. A single muddy footprint. Have you ever seen something in the woods that shouldn't exist? If you have, tell me your story. Because I don't want to be the only one who knows what's out there in the trees. Do you dare to listen to the dark? If tonight's tale gave you chills, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what creeps you out and what other stories you'd love us to explore. Don't miss out on the next terrifying story. Subscribe to DTC, The Place of the Brave, and join the family that thrives on the unknown. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to hear every spine-chilling tale. Share this video with someone brave enough to face the darkness, and let's dive deeper into the creeps that haunt our world. Comment below and become part of the terror. The darkness is calling, and we want you with us. Story 4. The Whispering Voices in the Deep Woods. I had been a lumberjack for nearly 10 years, and I had never truly believed in the strange stories people often told about the deep woods until I experienced something horrifying myself. It happened about 3 years ago when my team was assigned to log trees in a remote forest, nearly 4 hours away from the nearest town. A place where even cell signals didn't exist, and our only means of communication was the radio. When we first set foot in that forest, an eerie sense of unease washed over me. The towering trees twisted in the wind, producing a wailing sound like a mournful cry. The air was heavy, as if something unseen was watching us. But at that moment, we still thought everything was normal. During the day, we worked hard, felling massive trees, the scent of pine resin and damp earth filling the air. But at night, the atmosphere thickened, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The wind stopped, the leaves no longer rustled, and an eerie silence engulfed everything. That's when the strange things started happening. We heard whispering over the radio. It wasn't the usual static or interference. It was distinct, deliberate whispers, as if someone was trying to convey something we couldn't quite comprehend. Don't turn back. One night, my coworker Jackson grabbed the radio from my hand, his face pale with dread. But all he heard was static. We tried switching frequencies again and again, but no matter what we did, the whispering persisted. Sometimes we heard faint laughter, other times soft sobbing. Jackson, usually a skeptic, started growing uneasy. "Someone is watching us," he muttered, his voice dry. On the 5th day, while working, one of our team members stumbled upon something that sent shivers down our spines. A small, abandoned shack stood hidden deep among the thick foliage. At first, we assumed it belonged to a drifter or a hunter, but when we peeked inside, my stomach twisted in revulsion. Scattered across the damp, moldy floor were tattered children's clothes covered in dirt, as if they had been discarded long ago, yet still held traces of the children who once wore them. A musty, acrid scent of decaying fabric filled the air, making me gag. I bent down and picked up a tiny frayed shirt with deep scratches on it, like someone had desperately clung onto it. Beside it, a stack of old, stained photographs lay haphazardly. One photo depicted a child standing next to a man, but the man's face had been violently scratched out. A chill ran down my spine as my heart pounded. Those scratches looked fresh. The shack's walls bore deep gouges, as though someone had clawed at them, trying to escape. My stomach churned. Someone had been trapped in here, and they hadn't left on their own. We decided to return to camp immediately, but that night, the nightmare truly began. Sometime past midnight, I woke to the sound of footsteps crunching outside our tent. The whispers on the radio grew louder, more distinct than ever before. Grabbing my axe, I crept outside, scanning the darkness with my flashlight. And then I saw them. Figures stood motionless among the trees, watching. They didn't move, just observed. Then one of them suddenly tilted its head, as if listening to something, before taking a slow, unnatural step forward, its movements fluid but disturbingly wrong, as though its joints weren't functioning like a human's. My breath hitched. My heart hammered against my ribs as I realized they were all starting to move toward us. Their eyes reflected the flashlight's beam, glowing eerily in the darkness. Before I could scream, a blood-curdling shriek erupted from Jackson's tent. I turned just in time to see him being dragged out by one of them. Without thinking, I charged forward, swinging my axe, but a sudden, brutal impact from behind knocked me out cold. When I woke up, daylight had broken. Jackson lay motionless on the ground, his shirt soaked in blood. Several members of our team were injured, but Jackson was the only one who hadn't survived. We rushed to inform the authorities. The police arrived, combed through the area, but they found nothing. No footprints, no fingerprints, no evidence of an attack. Only Jackson's radio remained, still whispering unintelligible words. I left the lumberjack profession after that. Every night I still hear those whispers in my dreams. They haven't disappeared, they're just waiting. I don't know what those things were, human or something else entirely. But I do know one thing: some mysteries in the forest are better left undiscovered. Have you ever heard strange sounds in the woods? Maybe you've experienced something eerie but dismissed it as imagination. If so, share your story. Perhaps you're not the only one who has heard them. And if you do hear whispers, don't ever try to find out where they come from. As the darkness deepens and the stories grow more unsettling, we venture deeper into the unknown together. Each chilling tale brings us closer to the eerie truths lurking just beyond the veil of reality. The terror doesn't stop here, it only gets worse. Subscribe to DTC, The Place of the Brave now, and stay on the edge of your seat. You won't want to miss what's lurking in the shadows next. Hit that notification bell and prepare for the next terrifying chapter. Remember, in the world of DTC, the Place of the Brave are always waiting, and they never rest. Good luck sleeping tonight.